there were ICE agents that were boxed in by 10 cars.
Yep.
This is a military operation, all right? You were in Afghanistan, right? Did 10 cars just show up by accident to box in a group of troops? No. That is an operation. By the way, this is exactly how. By the way, you should know this. If you're in Afghanistan, if you get a bunch of guys boxed in by cars, what's usually the next thing that happens?
You die.
Yeah, you get a VBID, right? So vehicle-borne IED. That is the classic scenario. I know a bunch of guys who came back from Afghanistan, and they don't even like. Being in traffic jams.
Oh no, I know. Listen,
traffic jams.
9 months after I got back, going to the mall, I would worry about. I will never, and to this day, I will not pull up right on the bumper of the car in front of me. You always leave an exit.
Yep.
But it's what you were saying earlier. I think is so important about the word and words and how words matter. As a Christian, my Bible starts off in the beginning was the Word. Could have started off in the beginning was light, or in the beginning was space, or in the beginning was God. But it started off the beginning as the Word, because words are so powerful. And if you believe in a higher authority, then you believe in the power of words. And this thread of our culture has lost the word, and they believe that human beings are the ultimate authority. Our government is the ultimate authority, and that's why words are so fluid on the left. They don't mean anything. What is a woman? They don't know. They won't put a fence around it.
Yeah. The fact that they will use words in a way to just assert power, that's a really difficult thing for the average person to wrap their head around, because one of the blind spots that liberalism, and when I say liberalism, I mean like a liberal democracy like our Republican form of government, where we have a Republican form of government, but our society is a very liberal, focused on liberty, focused on the individual. But one of the things that liberalism has kind of a blind spot, or is vulnerable to, is people that approach the good-hearted and honest debate without the same scruples, right? If you're going to come to a debate and you don't intend on being honest, and you don't intend on having a charitable conversation, and all you're going to do is use the most hyperbolic way to engage that you can, and just assert that your enemies are evil, and you assert that their motivations are bad, the people that want to engage in dialogue are generally at a loss. And it makes it really difficult for people for normal people that aren't schooled in that, people that don't understand how people, the left will operate.
Well, that's exactly why John Adams said our country was built for a moral and religious people.
100%. 100%.
Exactly.
To go back to what Jack was saying about, you were saying this is the beginning of the overthrow of our government. Those seeds, I think, were planted 60s and 70s.
I don't know if it's. I don't know if they're going to overthrow. To be fair, they want to overthrow our government.
Let's just say overthrow our society.
But that's what they want. In this instance, I just want to limit it to this: that when you're looking at Portland, you're looking at Chicago, which are sort of the pivot point cities. They're the key cities in their respective states, Oregon, Illinois. There's tons of parts of Illinois and Oregon that are not in rebellion. But with these cities being in open rebellion, they are testing whether or not the federal government will have the resolve to be able to enforce the law here.
Right. And I think those seeds were planted in probably the 60s and 70s in colleges that teach the postmodernism, that teach the deconstruction. We had the Weather Underground people who were felons, killing people, making bombs. They were Marxists. They went to prison. They were pardoned by leftists, liberals. Cuomo did it. Clinton did it. They went into colleges and started teaching.
And there are no movies about the Weather Underground. You do not see 2,500 bombings the United States saw between 1970 and like midway through 1972. Yep. So don't tell me, and you can talk to people who are like, I was live in the 70s. That never happened. Yeah, because you've never seen it in Hollywood.
I know. Well, this is one of those hilarious things that every now and again, and listen, I'm not trying to put everyone in a generation in the same box. My parents are boomers. They're wonderful people. They're incredibly based. But it was just the fact that generation was particularly consumed by media and by television. And I think part of the reason that we're not is because we've gotten more skeptical of what we've been told by the pundits and the folks on TV. But I will say this. when somebody points, I saw this. Somebody pointed out, like, well, the Weather Underground was setting off bombs and they were extremely violent, but like no one talks about it and no one knew about it because it wasn't on TV. And every now and again, you'll see some older guy commenting like, no, I was there and it didn't happen. You're making their point. No, I know that you're making their point. But here's the thing. Listen.
I mean, on X, I was doing that.
Yeah. Like my parents and I guess it depends on what background you're from, because they knew that. They knew that hippies were no good. They know, like, there were boomers who were based. But this is, can I say one thing actually? Yeah. This is, I asked my dad this. I remember when I was like 12. I was like, Dad, and pardon my French, but I just got to quote the man accurately. I was like, Dad, he was born in the early 50s. So I was like, in the 60s, did you know any hippies? And my dad, he's a South Sider. He's from Chicago. He's like, we knew one hippie. Everyone thought he was an asshole. That was exactly. It. He's like, in movies, they have you think everyone was a hippie. No one liked those guys.
There is empirical data. There is empirical data to show that this did have an effect at the time that is kind of misremembered or just totally overlooked by other things. And I'll tell you what happened. Because, okay, what were the years that I just said? 1970 to 1972. Well, was there something that happened nationally in 1972? Oh, there was a presidential election. That's right.
Yeah.
And does anyone remember? Let's put our poli-sci hats here. Who won the presidential election in 1972? Richard Milhouse Nixon. And how many states did he win? It was 49 out of 50 states in that election. So the idea that the 70s were, that was all about the counterculture, it was all about change. Really? No, it sounds like it was people like Seamus's dad sitting there going, hey, we need to do something about these crazy hippies. Let's put Nixon in there. Exactly. And then Watergate happens 2 years later, totally overshadows everything that people were fighting against in 68. So remember, Nixon wins in 68 and then wins in 72, campaigning on what? Cleaning up the streets. And by the way, ending the war in Vietnam. So that's what he ran on. And this idea that, and by the way, I do believe that Watergate itself will be exposed one day, and we'll get the truth about how he was totally set up by
Nixon
the FBI.
Redemption arc?
Nixon Redemption arc. I'm all in.
Why does he need to be redeemed?
All in. Based.
Well, what happened today makes Watergate look like a parking ticket.
Well, exactly. And we'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minit because we've got some, and more spying coming up. But I want to hit a couple more pieces on this before we do get to the next story. But it does just goes to show you that even though we haven't done any movies on this, and certainly, by the way, Seamus, do you have any Freedom Tunes on the Weather Underground?
We actually haven't done a Freedom Tunes. I'm part of the problem.
Oh my gosh!
Listen, I make fun of the lefties that are around today. I have made fun of boomers.
And how many episodes have you done of that?
We on Freedom Tunes, we have like over 600 videos that we've done.
600 videos and not a single one. Not a single one.
Can I just connect one of those scenes to how?
Maybe we'll bring them up in Twisted Plots. Maybe I'll have to bring up the Weather Underground and Twisted.
In 2020, so Susan Rosenberg was pardoned by Clinton, right, on his last day in office, I
yes,
believe.
That's right.
She became a professor. And then around 2020, she was part of Thousand Currents, right, which helped Act Blue with their money during the riot and all the let's get the arsonists bailed out. So there's a direct line between those domestic Marxist terrorists to the Black Lives Matter domestic Marxist terrorists.
Well, and who were... so Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn ended up raising the son of, I can't remember her first name, Boudin was the last name.
Yes, Boudin.
Well, I can't remember his mom's name.
Oh, my bad. Sorry.
And so they ended up raising the son of another pair of members of the Weather Underground who did go to jail for, I believe, killing a security guard when they were conducting a bank robbery. And his name was Chesa Boudin, and he became the George Soros DA of San Francisco.
True. It's true.
Who actually got thrown out because he was so crazy and he just stopped prosecuting crime. Mm-hmm. So again, all of the stuff that we live with, see, Seamus has to go a step past. The liberals that we live with now are the next generation of the Weather Underground.
They are.
Yeah.
It's true. I don't disagree with you. Listen, and I've done videos, not necessarily on the Weather Underground. Sorry, what's wrong with me? But I've done videos on what was happening in the 60s and even prior. You look at Alfred Kinsey and his whole series of perversions and the fact that...
Why is Seamus so lazy? Like, why doesn't he...
He's like backpedaling
He's
now.
like asking for $500,000. He can't even make a 30-second clip about the Weather Underground.
This is
undid
what happened.
your whole oeuvre.
I was specifically,
did.
I was specifically asked to do it, and I said no because I like the Weather Underground. No, but in all seriousness, hey, maybe the Weather Underground is going to have to come up in an episode of Twisted Plots. Maybe we'll figure that out.
It's worth pointing out in the 60s, there were a lot of people, the average person thinks that all of the hippies were anti-war and stuff. And to be honest with you, like there was a small portion that were anti-war, but they were anti-Vietnam War, not because they're against exercising power,
right.
but because they were on the side of the communists.
That's literally
Right?
it.
They were on the side of the Viet Cong. They thought that the United States was an imperial force and that it was evil and that the communists were the actual good guys. That's why Jane Fonda went to North Vietnam and did all the, took all the pictures that she did and basically was giving aid and comfort to the enemy. It was because they thought the U.S. was on the wrong side. It's not that they were against war. It's they were against the United States and they were communists, so they were ideologically aligned with the North.
And Shane, do you know the Star Wars tie-in there? Do you know what, Jameis?
The Star Wars tie-in?
Star Wars tie-in to what he said, what Phil's saying.
I don't know that piece of history
okay,
either.
so this is great. So the original draft of Star Wars, which would become the first movie with Lucas's script, which is totally thrown out by Fox, by 20th Century Fox, was the rebels were based on the Viet Cong. And the Empire was based on the United States and France. And obviously he drew on a lot of trappings from like Dune and stole a lot of Frank Herbert's iconography, but that's what he wanted it to be, and he wanted it to be this story where the rebels literally were that. And so if you actually watch, it doesn't happen in the first Star Wars movie, but in the third movie, in Return of the Jedi, you can really see, like some of those scenes when they're on
Endor.
Oh gosh, Endor, thank you. When they're on Endor, it kind of seems like a Vietnam-style movie, and that's why.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.